It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast. Ladies and gentlethems, lads and lasses of all ages, welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, July 18th, 2023, and it's time to get nerdy. Welcome to episode 275 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the multiverse. I am Maction, and I am joined by my friend, my comrade in gaming commentary. Not just the first option, but the best option, name of his comedy special, Mr. Lam Galuka, also known as Mr. Nice Guy 425. And for the next hour, it's time to talk about everything related to video game. News, history, lawsuits, everything in between. But first, Mr. Nice Guy, we haven't been able to get together in a couple of weeks. How the heck are ya?
Dude, I'm doing really, really well. Thought I was losing my voice. I'm not losing my voice. Or maybe it's just the energy of being back in the same virtual room as my bestie, that my voice just miraculously came back. Because I was earlier thinking I might not be able to do the show, but I'm feeling good now. It's been an interesting couple weeks, man. So we were talking briefly in the pre-show. I did a show, but it was a different type of show. So let me give you this for context.
Tell me more.
Last week couldn't do this show. My twin girls got baptized. Fantastic experience. Loved it last Tuesday. And then on Thursday, our family went down to Illinois for a church youth conference. You know, one of the things I do is I'm one of the adult leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm the coolest of the adult leaders, apparently. And so I was asked...
Of course. Why? Well, now hang on. Apparently, objectively, Mr. Nice Guy, I know you, and while I don't know them, I know their type, and nobody is going to hold a candle to you, dude.
To be clear, they are all awesome. All of the other people that I'm working with are awesome people. I love them. They think I'm cooler than I am. They said, hey, you know what, Mr. Nice Guy, would you be willing to DJ the dance for these youth? And I was like, I'm not a DJ. I am an entertainer, though, and I am a crowd pleaser, so you know what? I'll do it. And I was nervous, Mac, but I'll tell you what. It was one of the best experiences that I've had outside of comedy. Played the hits, played the classics, even played Getting Jiggy With It by Will Smith. And if I'm being honest, that song made them clear the floor. These 14 to 18-year-olds did not like that song. They had never heard that song. But I would say everything else that I played went really well. Made a few wisecracks into the microphone, had a good time, and I think I may have found my third calling, podcaster, comedian, DJ. DJ G is the name I go by.
Triple threat, DJ G. That's fantastic.
And I did get on the dance floor, Mac, and did the cha-cha slide with my young friends. And it was a treat. You should have been there.
Excellent. I should have. I will make a point to be there next time that DJG comes out to play. But dude, that's fantastic. It's a shame that they cleared the floor for, getting jiggy with it. But I guess that's just youth these days. And you're doing the good work of introducing them to the important classics, Mr. Nice Guy. So I know they don't appreciate it yet, but they will. They'll thank you someday.
It's true, and I'm trying to introduce them to rap too. These kids are phenomenal kids. We had a great time. They're not into hip hop, Mac, and I'm throwing a little hip hop in there. I'm letting them know, hip hop. You can dance to it. You can have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mix it in. I'll play a Beyonce song that has Jay-Z on it. So it's something that they're familiar with. But then it's like, hey, who's this dude? What is he doing making these words rhyme? I'm like, that's hip hop, y'all. That's hip hop. I told you it was great. Now you know.
Insidiously corrupting the youth with hip hop. I love it. My week's been okay. It's been good. It's been great. It kind of depends on the day, but I had something really cool happen today that I have to share that I think just captures a real high.
Ooh, what?
And that is that I was in the store today. I was walking through a Walmart, and I came across this magazine on the shelf, the Game Master's Book of Random Encounters.
Okay.
It was just sitting on the shelf with the other magazines. You know, it was between, I don't know, some driving magazine and a gun magazine. And I'm like, hey, look, Ma, we made it. Tabletop role-playing games made it onto the magazine shelf. And that means that we're there. We've done it. It is mainstream. And I feel like that was the sign I didn't know that I needed, but now I have.
At first I didn't know where you were going with that, because you said, and this magazine was just sitting there with the other magazines. And in my mind I was kind of like, that's what magazines be doing, Mac.
Uh-huh.
It's like when I walk down the bread aisle and the bread just be sitting there with the other bread. But now I understand what you're saying. That type of magazine, that genre in a Walmart is a big deal. I understand what you mean.
I've always been hoping for this day where, you know, tabletop role-playing games go from the satanic panic to being, to being fully invested everywhere. And yeah, no. So in that respect, it's a very good day. But also spent a lot of time with my spouse today. Got some really good food. It's just been a really good day. And it's been a good past couple of weeks. Work's been good. Everything's just been good. But it's even better now that I'm getting a chance to hang with you again. Original recipe, 2 Nerds in a Pod. Even though Extra Crispy is nice when we have a guest, nothing beats original recipe.
I'll take Extra Crispy on occasion. Right. The original recipe, You can't beat the original. Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in this chicken bucket of gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. What is new in video gaming, Mr. Nice Guy?
So much. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 275 of 2 Nerds in a Pod is a go. And Mac, I wanted to follow up. I listened to the episode you did with Nerd Next Door. It was phenomenal, first and foremost.
Thanks.
One of the things you talked about really caught my attention. Help me out here. I believe that they were talking about some video game facts and figures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could summarize, refresh my memory, refresh the viewer's memory.
Yeah, so the Entertainment Software Association did basically a survey of Americans, and they came away with a bunch of like really cool stuff, like something, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's something like
Yeah, I got 'em.
64% of Americans play some amount of video games every week, and I think it's like an hour or more of video games weekly, which I think is like super cool. But also, what games do you play, what the most popular genres are, sort of big widespread information across the entire US. This seemed really encouraging for Team Mainstream.
Yeah, these stats, and I actually do have them here. These numbers are great. Just to go over a couple of them, you're right. 65% of people playing video games, and this is in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, whenever someone says something against video games, I always like to point out that data can kind of be manipulated to say whatever you want. And so if I want to be objective, that could be the case here. But I still find these numbers to be very, very motivating, very, very exciting. I won't go too much into the nitty-gritty. 76% of kids under 18 play. 46% of gamers identify as female. 62% of adults over 18 play. So, I mean, this is pretty cool. Mac, video games have been cool for a long time, but it's nice to finally have some data.
It definitely 100%, but like the number that was the coolest, I don't know where it comes in the list. I think it's closer to the end. But it was something like most people or a lot of people said that of all the media they consume.
Yeah, it's and I can't find that number right now, but it basically says compared to TV, movies, music, video games provide the best bang for buck. And I'd agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about how much replayability the average game has.
Yeah.
You know, not even just Skyrim, but even Super Mario Brothers. You can play that over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Super telling, and I'm excited by these numbers. Video games, obviously, as with anything, should be used in moderation, right? Don't let it take over your life. Don't let it make you lose your job or ruin relationships. But don't be ashamed by being a gamer, no matter how old you are. Average age, Mac, 32.
32.
So it's not just people who are 18 and in college. It's professionals playing video games. Love it. Mac, we got some awesome other news stories to talk about today. Let's just start with the biggest one first. Because I know last week for Legalese, you covered the FTC decision surrounding Microsoft purchasing Activision. And one of the biggest concerns that you and I both have had over the past several weeks discussing this is what would happen to games like Call of Duty. Could Sony say we're no longer going to allow Call of Duty to be on Xbox? We're going to make it only on our console, and we're going to charge $100, for a copy. Well, temporarily, we have an answer to that question. This is on IGN.com, written by Adam Bankhurst. Here is what the article says. Xbox head Phil Spencer has revealed that Microsoft and PlayStation have signed a binding agreement to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation following the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Spencer took to Twitter to announce the news and share that he is looking forward to a future where players have more choice. Here's the tweet from Phil Spencer from July 16th. We are pleased to announce that Microsoft and PlayStation have signed a binding agreement to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation following the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. We look forward to a future where players globally have more choice to play their favorite games. No further details were shared by Spencer, so it's unclear how long or what it entails. However, it does follow the trial where Spencer said he will do whatever it takes to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. There's another quote, Mac, where he says he's making a commitment to keep it on PlayStation. Obviously, right, Sony would have to allow it to be on PlayStation. So he said, pending Sony saying, no, we don't want it anymore, or something crazy like that, he's going to do his part to keep it there. Mm-hmm. So that was something we were skeptical about. What are your thoughts on that?
So, fantastic news, Mr. Nice Guy. Thrilled, over the moon, delighted that that's where they've come down on this one. This is a win for all of us, that Call of Duty will continue to be available on PlayStation.
But what do you think about the timing of it, though? Because I feel like it would have been very easy for him to say during the trial, no, we're going to keep it on PlayStation. And he did kind of say that. But now we're quote-unquote post-trial, right? There's going to be appeals and things like that. And they're immediately signing a deal saying, hey, we're going to keep it there. I think, I know we don't.
Yeah.
You don't like to give goodwill to Microsoft and Phil Spencer, but I think they deserve some goodwill for it.
I think they deserve some credit that when people shined a light on, a problem, that they decided to sign a contract and do it. I think they deserve props for doing the right thing here. We don't have an alternate universe or alternate reality machine to know if but for the trial, which was very public, where they made a big deal about, Call of Duty not being available potentially in the future. We don't know if without that shining a light on it, if it would have turned out different. So, I want to give some credit. I just don't know what component what each is. We know that they said when they were talking to European regulators, when they bought up ZeniMax, they said that they were going to keep things available on other platforms. They said that in front of, regulatory bodies, and then they did the opposite later. I don't know really, but hey, this is a win, and I'll take a win, man.
The only thing I think is different about this is that they've now signed a binding contract post-trial, right?
Exactly. But that was the thing. When they told the regulators there was no binding contract, and I don't think people made enough of a fuss about it, so they didn't, I'm cynical, though. Obviously, I'm cynical. But Mr. Nice Guy, I think you're right. I would probably be the last person to give them credit just because I'm so cynical about it. But I have to say that, yeah, this pleases me. I think they did the right thing, and I'm thrilled that it's happening.
The one area where I'm a little cynical is I can't say that I'm that surprised. You think about the install base of PlayStations, and I don't know the numbers, but I know that there are more PlayStations out there than Xboxes, simply because we know PlayStation is winning this generation. To not have Call of Duty on PlayStation is throwing a lot of money out the window. Maybe it results in some more console sales where more people buy Xbox because they really want to play Call of Duty. But also, you just lose out on $60 a pop, or maybe not $60 a pop, but a percentage of $60, $70 a pop for every copy sold on PlayStation. And I think that would be a bad business move.
Yeah, no, I know that that's been some of the commentary that I've heard around the subject. And, maybe it was never going to be an issue because they didn't want to miss out on those dollars. So, maybe I was way too cynical with far too little reason to be.
I want to point out to those of you who play shooters, some of you may be old enough to remember when Sony had a contract with Activision, that they got Call of Duty DLC first. the game was on both consoles, but Sony, or was it Xbox? I don't know. It's gone back and forth. But I think that could be a thing again, where certain downloadable content, which is now all free, comes to Xbox first as a result of it being on Xbox, and Sony players have to wait. So it'll be super interesting to see how Xbox plays it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And we'll be watching.
We'll be watching. That's right. The biggest one, or not the biggest one, but another big one. Mac, are you familiar with Major Nelson? I know you're more of a PC and retro guy. Major Nelson, Larry Herb, Xbox. No pressure. It's all good.
Oh, no, all the pressure. Yeah, no, I'm afraid it doesn't ring any bells for me.
It's okay. I feel like we need to pay tribute to Major Nelson, because after 20 years, he is finally leaving Microsoft. Now, here's the article from PC Gamer. It says what I just said. After 20 years, he's leaving. Better known to gamers around the world as Major Nelson, he's leaving the company to move on to other things. Quote, after 20 incredible years, I've decided to take a step back and work on the next chapter of my career, Herb tweeted. As I take a moment and think about all we have done together, I want to thank the millions of gamers around the world who have included me as part of their lives. I want you to know every moment I was able to interact with you, the community, here on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Mixer, or at many events. I cherished every single moment. So, Mac, not a lot of commentary to have here. Simply wanted to pay tribute to Major Nelson. When I first got my Xbox 360 and I was watching Xbox videos online, he was always a big part of it. I think it's admirable that he was so loyal to the brand through tough times when Xbox was on top during the 360 era and when Xbox struggled in more recent times. You know, he was always super loyal and always really a big advocate for those who are fans of Xbox. So salute Major Nelson. We appreciate what you've done for gaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Mac, the interesting thing is he's 65. He's 65 years old.
65?
Yeah.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because, like, anybody who's participated in the process of video games, game making and such in, like, you know, if you were 30 in the 90s, then you're 60 now. It's kind of wild to think about it, but yeah. And it's kind of wild to think about, you know, an industry that you conceive of being populated exclusively by the youths, if you will. It's kind of wild to think of somebody retiring at retirement age from a video game company too. But, you know, we're finally there.
And it's interesting. I don't even know if he's retiring. It says he may be moving on to the next step of his career, which I think is awesome.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't catch that the first time around. I wonder where he would land next.
That's what I'm wondering, too. Video games are something, it's kind of like comedy or making movies, where if you enjoy it, it's not like it's a 9 to 5 in the traditional sense. You know, you could just keep doing it as much or as little as you would like. So I'm excited to see what he does next. Mac, there's so much news, but those are the main stories I wanted to hit today. That has been our news for the week.
All right. Well, let's take a little look then into the past. First, I want to start with a story that's happened back in 2012, and it's a bit dark, but go with me on a journey into the darkness here.
Okay.
July 15th, Taiwan. A young adult attempted a super long marathon of video game session of Diablo 3. He rents a private room of an internet cafe there in Taiwan and dies after 40 hours of playing Diablo 3. An employee came to check on him, and he woke up, apparently stood up, took a step, and then collapsed and died after a 40-hour marathon session. This was one of the things that got me to thinking about deaths in video games, or deaths attributed to video games.
Okay.
While this one happened this last week in 2012, it's not the first time that video games have killed. For example, I believe the first video game death of a real life person was back in 1982. Somebody playing at an arcade, and his heart gave out while he was moving between two different classic arcade games.
His what gave out? His heart?
His heart, yeah. He had a heart attack while playing video games, and he had been at it for a while. But just like video game marathons themselves have killed people in the past. There have been probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 deaths over the 20-year period of 2000 to 2020. And so, as sobering as all this is, kind of to what you were saying just earlier when you were talking about video games and being, doing things in moderation, we all need to make sure that we're taking good care of ourselves. And while there have been people who've done huge, long things, I think just remember, things in moderation, take care of yourself first. And also, and here comes the tongue-in-cheek part, maybe I've been too hard on Jack Thompson.
Stop it.
The disbarred lawyer of Florida. For more information, you can refer to episodes 89, 220, and of course our Portland live show. He was trying to protect you and me and all the kids of the world from the murders that video games would do to us. So, yeah, maybe we should give him some due. Anyway.
I've got to. Can I chime in here? I don't want to cut off your segment. I would say that you and I are more articulate, more well-spoken, more social than the average person, gamer or not. And so when it comes to stereotypes about gamers being socially awkward, having bad hygiene, not being able to find a romantic partner, like you and I both break that mold, and that's something that I take pride in. But when it comes to certain stereotypes about gamers and us not being in shape, and different things like that, like, I'm the first to acknowledge I'm not in terrible shape, but I could be in much better shape. And so to other people out there who listen to us, whether you listen to us live or just listen to us after the fact, because we get a lot of people listening, Mac hit the nail on the head. Please take good care of yourself, because gaming, just like anything, can get in the way of other things.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of gaming, but in moderation. That's what I wanted to say.
Agreed. And Power Wash Simulator is almost as satisfying as the real deal.
Stop.
So, let's move on. Another fun one, brief bit from history. July 11th, 2001, Square releases Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. A video game, movie, because it has the Final Fantasy moniker on it, that, like any Final Fantasy entry, has almost nothing to do with anything else in the series. It took 200 people 4 years of work. It cost $137 million and grossed only $85 million for a loss of $52 million, something that Square could hardly afford at the time. I'm sure that most of us have heard tell that the reason why Square and Enix merged together was because of the movie, flopped and drained Square's resources. But I will say it's difficult to say. Just like Lom, like we were talking about a second ago, we don't have that sort of alternate reality where we can be like, oh, if we could control for this one factor.
Right.
But it could definitely have been a contributing factor, the flop of the movie. The seeming smackdown that Square suffered after investing all that time and effort and energy and means that they needed the merger to stay afloat. But then again, it was also Enix backing out of the deal with Square. Maybe they could have been like holding off because they backed out of that merger in 2001 and then came back and made the merger in 2003, 2 years later. So maybe it was a difference of Square being in dire straits and the terms were now favorable. Maybe it's something completely differently. But what we can say is that Max from the 2015 game Life is Strange does say that it is the best sci-fi movie of all time. And I think that girl knows a thing or two about science fiction. So if you haven't seen Final Fantasy Spirits Within, you owe it to yourself. Did you watch that one in theaters, nice guy?
Yeah, I did see it in theaters. You legitimately think it's the best sci-fi movie of all time?
No, but Max does.
Okay.
Max's opinions are more important than mine.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters.
I thought it was okay. I thought it was very impressive, but, not my favorite.
It was fine.
It's fine. Anyway, a third thing I wanted to mention today for video game history, and then we can move on, is a shout out to Kazuko Shibuya. I believe I said her name right. In July 12th, 1990, the release of Final Fantasy I, but Kazuko, she was on the art team for Final Fantasy I. But more importantly than that, she was like on the art team, did the art, the pixels, that classic menu. She did the battle menus and everything that wound up being the staple of the Final Fantasy games for all through Final Fantasy 6, 7, so on. And she currently is art director at Square Enix. Shout out to her. I feel like we're giving lots of people shout outs today, but Kazuko and her work on the Final Fantasy series, absolutely legend. And that's kind of all I had for gaming history this week.
Nice. Love it, dude. Love it. Well, hey, it's time for Indie Game of the Week, where we talk about a game that may need some more attention, or maybe it doesn't, and we'll bring it to light either way. Well, Mac, this week we have a game that you and I have both been playing called Curse Crackers, for whom the bell tolls.
The bell toils.
Excuse me, the bell toils. Excuse me. That's a long name.
It is, and it's designed to trip you up.
It really is, because you think about bell tolls, bell toils, and also Belle is the name of the character, so it's not like B-E-L.
Yeah, and like she's doing all those like side quests. She's toiling for, I think that's what they were going for.
I think so.
Hit us up in the comments.
Well, here's the description. First off, this game released August 30th, 2022. Currently sits at 118 reviews on Steam. Very positive rating. Developer and publisher, Colorgrave. And here is the description, Mac, before we get to your thoughts on this game. Jump, bounce, and vault your way through the magical world of Ledamra as Belle, the acrobat, and chime the living bell. As Belle the acrobat and chime the living bell. I read that terribly. Your old friend has suddenly reappeared with a crew of troublemaking, graffiti-loving skeletons and kidnapped your boyfriend. Take on Bonnie's new crew and get your boyfriend back. This game is $14.99 on Steam. Mac, what did you think about this game?
Okay, so I have to be perfectly honest. I come to anything with some amount of biases, right? And when I saw like the artwork and the stuff for the game, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not really going to enjoy this. This doesn't look like my kind of game. I could not have been more wrong. Loved it. The movement in this game, so much fun, especially once I really nailed what I was going for. And some of the not quite power-ups, but some of the
abilities.
Yeah, some of those equipable abilities that you can get really changed my tune on a lot of the platforming. Some stuff went from being really difficult to very satisfying. And I was glad that I didn't, find that aspect later on in the game. There were a lot of ways that the game didn't really hold your hand. Like Mr. Nice Guy, did you ever try going off the map?
I did, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't try it until you mentioned it to me. But it's so cool. Like, there's so much. Tell the people more.
Yeah, so like it gives you this sort of map in the style of something kind of approximating Mario 3 sort of layout in a world map. But then there are these areas where, oh, look, there's a gap in these trees to the north. And you don't have to move along the line. You can kind of free-form move. And then I'm like, oh, there's this gap in the trees to the north. Why don't I go through that? And then there was something there. And then there was another gap in another spot, and another gap in another spot, and a repeating maze, a la Zelda 1 graveyard style, or barren desert style rather, and just a whole bunch of stuff that I was very surprised by the depth, But Mr. Nice Guy, I've been talking way too much. What did you like about it?
This game surprised me. I want to talk a little bit quickly about my interaction with the developer, because they had tweeted something out that said, "Hey, does anyone want a copy of one of our games?" Right? Anyone, not anyone want a copy, but like people who do content, people who podcast, make videos, Would you like a copy? And so I looked it up. I looked up their 2 games. We'll talk about the other one next week. And I thought, these look like games that we would like. So I hit them up, and they sent me a copy of Just Cursed Crackers. And I said, hey, would it be possible for us to get both? I think we'd really like both. I hate to be greedy. Like, I'm not trying to be greedy, but I think we'd enjoy both. And they were like, oh, how will we ever survive? And they were like, absolutely. You can have both of them. Please enjoy. And so super, super generous people. I don't know how this game is not getting way more attention. We previously talked about a game that we played a few weeks ago, and we said this game is NES style, but it doesn't incorporate modern game design philosophy. I would say that Cursed Crackers is kind of like Game Boy Advance, but it also incorporates modern game design philosophy. So they did exactly what we criticized another game for not doing. Mac, the depth is amazing. You can play this game as simply or as complicated as you want. You can run through the levels, you can not collect anything, and you can have a good time. Or you can learn how to speed run it. You can learn all these extra controls, bouncing off characters and trying to do it quickly. And then you can go to these little hubs. You can talk to the characters, get side quests, go back and find stuff in the levels, help these NPCs with their problems. And it's the perfect platform.
I hesitate to use that word, but I think it's pretty darn close to perfection. Because it's really, really good. When I screwed something up, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 challenges that required platforming that I felt were just too tight and a little bit too unforgiving. One of the end game sort of, I should say post-game or post-ending challenges for Cursed Crackers was just so tight because it was instant death if you touched any of these other things, and that was the one time that I got frustrated with this. But everything else, when I botched something, it was on me, and I knew it. You know what I mean?
And it's one of those games where I would say there's probably not enough of a community to where you could easily find walkthroughs, so you kind of have to figure stuff out on your own. I could be wrong about that. But, I mean, it has 118 reviews on Steam. It's coming up on being out for a year. It's really, really good. And, Mac, I think that this is probably something that could have come out Game Boy Advance era, like I said. And had it come out then, it would be one of the best games ever made on the Game Boy Advance. Today, it comes out, there's an oversaturation of indies. There's so much stuff, platforming-wise, that's out there. It fell under the radar. But these people are extremely gifted. The amount of dialogue is the other thing that really impressed me. There's so much going on in terms of character stories, in terms of collectibles, in terms of optional things you can do to increase your experience or enhance your experience. This game is great.
Absolutely.
What did you think about the controls? And what did you think about how it played on the Steam Deck?
Oh, it played fantastic on the Steam Deck. The controls were solid. I very quickly figured out the moves and the move set that I really liked and basically stuck favoring those moves. I rarely just fantastic. And I almost never, until I was trying to speed run to get the medals for completing a level fast, I almost never used the sort of speedy vaulting maneuver. So I certainly kicked myself for not trying to get the speed tech down first because of how easy it would have made some of the challenges, how much easier. But anyway, that's just me rambling now. Nonetheless, loved the controls. I did.
The only complaint I had about this game, the font that the dialogue was in, for whatever reason, drove me crazy. I don't know why. I just didn't like the font. And I know that's such a trivial thing, but I didn't like it. And also, I don't think you could speed through it, if I remember correctly. You had to wait for it to go across the screen when characters were talking.
There was a setting in the menu that you could do to change the text to instantaneous.
Oh.
And I didn't find it until basically post-game content. I agree. That was one thing that I was like, oh man, I wrote it down to be like, now this is something that could be improved. And then when I found it in the menu, I'm like, well, that's on me.
No, I would say if I'm going to sum this up in one sentence, This game is the epitome of a hidden gem. That's how I would describe it.
Agreed 100%. Words right out of my mouth, Mr. Nice Guy. And thank you for reaching out to them to get, because like I said, I would have passed this by and I feel ashamed for it. But yeah, I'm so glad you saw what I couldn't.
Really good. Thank you, Color Grave, again, for providing the copies for review. That's been our Indie Game of the Week.
Well, now we turn to a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off of the ground. We've talked about some stuff that's already out. Let's talk about some stuff that's getting there. This is a game called Auto Forge, and I'm dropping a link in the chat so that those of you who are here with us live can take a look. We're going to look it over. We're going to discuss whether or not we think it has the stuff, and at the end say whether or not it should be kickstarted or kicked out of here. So, what is this game? Imagine it as Terraria with 2 scoops of Factorino. This project is being done by a fella named Jason McMorris, who did a Kickstarter back in the Wild West days of 2014, the Wild West days of that platform, and was successful back then in getting a crowdfunding project. This particular game, though, for AutoForge, $25,000 is the goal for this project. $20 for a copy of the game on the platforms offered, which at this moment I believe I just saw Steam, although it's possible it could be offered on others, but I just didn't notice them. Deliverable in Q2 of next year, is aiming for early Q2 of 2024. But yeah, in practice, it has that sort of side-scrolling platformer, Terraria feel, placing blocks, crafting things, putting stuff together. But it really comes into its own with the automation that's going on. In it, you're basically this sort of like magic golem that's all alone on a planet that's sort of, different than when he went to sleep. And now you're trying to rebuild things back. But there are enemies, there are monsters, there are things going on, and you've got to build your way there. I tried out, and I'm putting this out there, but there is a playable demo for this. And bless you, Jason, for putting that front and center. The thumbnail from the very jump, has an indicator demo on it. But I put some time into it on the Steam Deck, and I loved these crank drills, right? So you craft the drill, you stick it on the resource you're trying to do, and you go into the interface for the drill, and you crank a crank around to give it power, and then it keeps running for a while, and you've got to come back and crank it up again so that it does power again. And it was just very satisfying. It's one of the first tech items you build, but I was surprised by how satisfying it was. It is, though, really much more of a desktop game in the way that its interface is built, at least currently. And while I was able to get it going on my Steam Deck, the Steam Deck struggled a little bit with mapping and me figuring out exactly how to get everything. Does it work? Yes. But of course, we're talking about an early demo on the Steam Deck. I'm sure it'll be better by the time, but it was built desktop first with that demo in mind, and it will incredibly satisfying. I think you'll find it on the desktop. Anyway, that all being said, Mr. Nice Guy, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I've never gotten into Terraria. It seems like the type of game that if I got into it, I would love it, but then it would take away from my ability to get into other stuff. And I feel the same way about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a game that's going to have a community, assuming it gets made. And it's going to be a game that takes time away from other games, which is exactly what you want as a game maker. You want your game to take up as much time of mine as possible, right? So I tell my friends, they get into it, et cetera, et cetera. This is a genre that we just don't see enough of. But I'm concerned by the fact that you said it doesn't work well on the Steam Deck, at least in demo form. Because I feel like a lot of Kickstarters have found more success because handheld PC gaming has become more of a thing. And so these little indie games, these pick up and play type of things, do better when they can be played on the go. So the fact that you have to remap the buttons and all this is a little bit worrisome, but the design is really good. This guy is good at marketing. This is going to sound dumb, but I like that he's in Portland, Oregon, right? Like, you don't think of Portland, Oregon as a hub for, like, making games, right? Someone who's making games. But this is probably just a dude who said, hey, I want to make a dope game, and I live in Portland. Like, this is where I want to be. I'm not in Silicon Valley, and I'm just going to bust my tail, and I'm going to make this thing. So, to me, that's kind of cool. I don't really have a lot of complaints about this other than $20. $20 is too much for this when being compared to a game like Terraria that is one of the most recognized indies. And I think Terraria by default costs either $14.99 or $9.99. So that's my complaint.
So I will push back that I think 20 is, precisely because as somebody who is into these types of games, I know just how many hours of return I'm going to have on a world that's procedurally generated with crafting and especially with some amount of automation. That was definitely something that, like, Minecraft really only got after modders put it in, but there was a huge desire for it. And something that I don't think is a part of Terraria, but there are whole games that are just based on, like, building a factory and having things automation. There's something so satisfying about that. I feel like this is the type of game that will over and beyond return my $20 and continue to keep me engaged. And I think that, yes, the demo not working very well on the Steam Deck, I think that's just a problem that's going to get ironed out, as I think this was built desktop first, and I think it will probably, I see potential there for it to work well on the Steam Deck, because after all, we've got Minecraft and we've got things like Terraria, and the control schemes aren't all together fundamentally different. So I feel hopeful that that will be a passing issue. But yeah, so all that being said, obviously we wish Jason McMorris the best here. We hope AutoForge knocks all expectations out of the park, but kick or kickstart, Mr. Nice Guy, for you?
I 100% say kickstart this. I really, really think that $20 is too much, and that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people won't get their money out of it. I think they will.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the market is dictating that this should be less in price.
I hear what you're saying. I also say kickstart. While I would enjoy it even, I might necessarily enjoy it even more if it were less. But after having tried the demo, I'm a believer, and I'm putting $20 down on this one myself.
Well done. Best of luck to you, Jason. And now it is time for Nerd Flex. Ooh.
Well, today is a special day because we have a sound test. I've selected a sound from somewhere, somewhen, somehow in video gaming. It is your task to identify where it comes from. Shout us out on social medias, include the hashtag soundtest, and let us know. Listen up, and good luck. You'll need it. All right, now on to some trivia.
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, Mac, I listened to last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to say, my friend, was a little disappointed by some of the questions you missed, because I was sitting there at the driving range today, hitting some golf balls, listening to the episode. And one of the questions was, which rapper said, "You don't get another chance, life ain't a Nintendo game"? And I immediately was like, Eminem. That's Eminem. I needed to be there. I wanted to hop in a time machine and be there for last week's recording, because I knew that one. And I also knew Super Game Boy, the other question.
Super Game Boy just couldn't lodge in my brain. It was as good. I called it Super System, but I never listened to Eminem, not growing up, and I think I've only heard like one or two Eminem songs, even to this very day. So that's on me being uncultured.
It's all good. He's not for everybody. Well, hey, let's get to some of these questions from the test bank. This one is a Rockstar Games question. And this is a tough one, but I think I may know the answer. Rockstar Games, on what console was GTA Chinatown Wars first released? On what console was GTA Chinatown Wars first released? Now, Mac, back in the day, I was a big GTA fan, and I'm still a big GTA fan. And so I remember the idea of being able to play GTA handheld was so appealing to me. And so I know that GTA Chinatown Wars was available on the Sony PSP because I had a Sony PSP, and I had that game. My question is, was it also available on the Nintendo DS? And I don't think it was. So I think it's Sony PSP, PlayStation Portable.
So, Mr. Nice Guy, I will yield to your expertise. GTA was not one of my franchises, and I could not begin to hazard a guess. But, like, I trust you, 100%. PSP, I'm with you.
Okay. Dang it. It was the Nintendo DS.
What? Who would have thought that Nintendo, a family company, would have let that Grand Theft and that autoing on their platforms?
And that's what I'm saying is I was pretty sure it was on both, but I thought it came to PSP first.
Yeah, I was right there with you. I would have thought that it would have been more appealing to the Sony crowd. So, yeah, Uncle Ruckus thought PSP for sure as well. So at least we're in good company, because Uncle Ruckus, you're good company.
Not a problem. Well, hey, let's get another question. FPS, which publisher is responsible for the Far Cry games? This one shouldn't be that hard. We should be able to talk through this.
Okay, right. Far Cry. Is it Ubisoft?
Ubisoft, that's the thing is, they're the dev, right? Are they the publisher?
Yeah.
When I think Far Cry, I think Ubisoft for sure. We may just have to go with Ubisoft.
Yeah, because I can't think of any other name that associates in my name with Far Cry.
Okay, Ubisoft, final answer. It is Ubisoft. They're the publisher and the developer.
Ooh.
We are 1 for 2. I want to almost say we're 1.5 for 2. Because Nintendo DS, I mentioned it. Let's get another question pulled up here. Okay, this is a really good question. And I do not know the answer off the top of my head, so we'll have to talk through it.
Okay.
Zelda. According to the Hyrule Historia, which game is chronologically the earliest? Which game is chronologically the earliest? This is a great question.
Yeah, so we know we've got the 3 timelines. I feel like Skyward Sword is chronologically the first because the Master Sword isn't even the Master Sword yet in Skyward Sword. Part of, spoilers, part of what you're doing in Skyward Sword is turning the Skyward Sword into what will be the Master Sword.
Yep.
So that's my guess. What do you think, Mr. Nice Guy?
Just because Majora's Mask is so time travel-y, you go back, you do Days Over again. I almost lean towards.
Interesting. Well, but it would have to be then, Ocarina of Time, though, because that comes right before Majora's Mask chronologically, right?
In terms of release date, but you're right. Like even storyline-wise, so that wouldn't even make sense. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah, and like Link's Awakening, isn't there rumor that is like all a dream? I don't know. There's so much lore.
Yeah.
Why don't we just go with you? Why don't we go with yours? I'm gonna go Majora's Mask. You go with what do you want?
Skyward Sword.
Dang, Mac! It is Skyward Sword. Well done.
A.R. Wilson has a question for us here in the chat live. The question is, what year did the NBA 2K franchise start? Mac, I know you don't play sports games, however. I'm going to guess 2K franchise started in the year 2000 or maybe 99. Technically, if, because like I could see that being a release date, kind of like how Cars, you'll get the 2023 model in 2022.
Yeah, and I think you're right. In fact, I know you are because back in the day, NBA 2K came out. It was NBA Live for the longest time, was the one dominating the market. 2K came out. Allen Iverson was on the cover for like the first 3 years. NBA 2K, NBA 2K1, NBA 2K2, maybe even NBA 2K3. And then they started switching up the cover athletes. So, A.R. Wilson, what is the correct answer? I know Mac is right about that. Because I own those old copies.
So 1999 final answer?
It's like basketball season overlaps a year, right? It starts at the end of one year and goes to the next. So, like it starts in October, goes through June. So, game release would have been for that 2000 season. Yep, you got it, dude.
Woo! Just like car years. Whew. Thank you, A.R. Wilson, for the question.
That has been Nerdflex. Thanks, everybody.
All right, well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
Like it or not, lawsuits seem to have an increasing bearing on this digital age of ours and the digital video games that we love. So here's where we talk a bit about some of that stuff. And in the past, while this is not specifically video game related, Mr. Nice Guy, this follows up on some topics that we talked previously. In the past, we discussed the concepts and ideas of Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder and the various legal gray areas that arose from that whole ball of wax. We referenced it first in episode 134, way back in the day, but also in 254 and 255 when the OGL and Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro trying to change things became, kind of blew up in their faces. The legalese segments of those 3 episodes I mentioned are all great things to listen to if you want a more in-depth discussion of the topics. But the short version is that for a host of reasons, at the very least one of those reasons being the amazing financial success of fan-made D&D content, the current owners of D&D, Wizards of the Coast, which is a Hasbro-owned company, wanted to tighten up their rights on Dungeons & Dragons related content. As a result, there was some concern and backlash with respect to what they tried to change. Again, episodes 254, 255. What we're going to look at today, though, Mr. Nice Guy, is the response to those events from Paizo. Those are the guys who made Pathfinder, and what they put out was called the Open RPG Creative License, or ORC license for short, or ORC. The purpose of the ORC, what they written it for is Paizo contracted a law company to write a framework of legal speak to basically give open source wise to the community to let the maker of a game share the game mechanics in a way that people are free to modify, share, adapt, and such, but to preserve for the original maker the kind of control that they may want over specific items. Now, I do have to mention I do take some small amount of issue with the discussion of copyrighted game mechanics in the very first instance, for reasons that some of you guys have probably heard before. I know Lom has heard this ad nauseum, but episode 134, that's the key there. But that's not beyond the point of the discussion here. In essence, the ORC makes a framework of both vocabulary and style that is meant to allow you to take the ORC, and if we take, for example, if we take this book of random encounters, this magazine that I got, I didn't realize I'd be flashing this twice in the same episode, and if you slapped the ORC, preamble and vocabulary into this, that it gives you a way for you to work transformatively off of published works, either print or digital, and make your changes. Like, so I could take this and I could make adaptations and changes, and gives me a way to, in turn, make this, make a transformative work, make it my own, and then for other people to do their own remixes down the line, and so on and so forth. But in that ORC license, it specifically makes common legalese vocabulary for you to designate, and how to specifically designate what you want to be unique to your creation, or otherwise off limits for the remixing. So in essence, it's basically, hey, I heard you like games. Hey, I heard you like being able to have some of your content be your own baby and hold it close. But I also heard that you like to, outside of these cool things that you like yourself, to let other people remix and share and adapt. You like collaboration. Let's try and help you legally preserve for yourself the things that you find are the core of your ideas, while letting other people express their creativity, take the ball and run. Fanfic, so on and so forth. Transformative in its nature has to be, collaborative, and this very much puts it forward. That the ORC came out just, earlier this month or late last month, but the point being is that is what this whole legalese wild situation with Wizards of the Coast has produced, at least from Paizo, is a good way for you to just slap more than just a disclaimer, but slap a way onto your content that you create, a way for other people to remix it that still respects your rights as the original creator. And while I don't think it's perfect, I think it's a great step forward. And it's like the kind of thinking that we need to both allow for people to express their creativity, but also allow other people to express theirs with the help of yours. So anyway, all that is not really law. It's legal speak. You might even call it legalese.
Love it, dude. That's such a cool concept.
I know.
And if Nintendo adopts it, that would be next level. They won't, though.
Yeah, it's the kind of concept I would love to see many companies adopt. And I mean, hey, good guy Paizo here. So, yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our show. But before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we've been into across all platforms, across all streaming services and physical media. And if you're here live, you have a job to do. Let us know in the chat what you've been watching and playing. Mac, what have you been into the past couple weeks?
So I haven't been playing much or watching much, but I have been watching Dimension 20's new series, Dungeons and Drag Queens, which is Brennan Lee Mulligan as Dungeon Master. It's a actual play thing, just like the rest of Dimension 20 stuff, and it is and it is 4 prominent drag queens. Bob the drag queen, is it Trixie, Alaska, and Jujubee? I think it's Trixie. Anyway, but yeah, it's 4 drag queens. They're playing Dungeons and Dragons in full drag at the table, and it's really awesome. And Bob the drag queen...
Is this a YouTube?
You can watch the first episode on YouTube, but, Dimension 20 is it's a Dropout. College Humor, formerly College Humor, now Dropout, has their own sort of separate thing, but you can watch the first episode. It is fun because, Bob the drag queen far and away knows, some of them, kind of showed up and were just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll play. Oh, there's numbers. Oh, there's math rocks. But Bob read the book before he came around. So he's very much like, yeah, so this is what's going on. It's just like, yeah, we roll this, we do this. Yeah, I can cast that spell. And it's just, it's really fun because I would have never expected Bob the drag queen to be the most seasoned, I guess, player at that table, but yet here we are. It's really heartwarming. And I've also been watching Star Trek Lower Decks, and I've been loving that. That's what I've been watching. As for playing, Cursed Cracker, and I've also been playing Trinity Fusion.
Nice. Love it. Well, I have been watching, not a lot. I've been so busy with stuff, but I have been watching Secret Invasion, and I'm enjoying that. Marvel's Secret Invasion, and y'all should check that out if you like Marvel and you like Samuel L. Jackson. Shout out to Alex Mann for the Prime sub. Appreciate you, brother. As far as what I have been playing, I've been playing a lot of Fallout New Vegas, and I know I'm a decade late, but I love Fallout. And I had played Fallout 3, I had played Fallout 4, I had never played New Vegas, so I picked it up a few months ago, knowing I would get to it, and I've gotten to it, and I completed the main game. And then now I'm going back and doing all the DLCs, because technically you're supposed to do those before you finish the game. So that's been fun. And Mac, a game that I've been considering getting into, Fallout 76. It had a rough launch 3 years ago, But now, apparently, it's really, really good. And as someone who loves Fallout, the idea of running around multiplayer on my Steam Deck with other people, I may have to pick that up. So, also been playing Cursed Crackers and a few other indie games that we will talk about in the future.
Before we sign off for the evening, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend us your ear. The Podcast Awards is on, and you know what? We are available to be nominated in the overall category and especially in games and hobbies. We need to be in the top 10 of the nominees, volume-wise, to be on the final slate, and we are confident, or at least we're hopeful, that like in years past, if we can make it to the finals, that we can be awarded again for games and hobbies. You make my dreams come true. Who? You.
We got to get a third of these trophies, y'all. We're going to three-peat. We need your help, though.
Three-peat. Help us make it happen.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 275 of Two Nerds in a Pod. We love y'all. You know what to do. Keep it nerdy. Be excellent to each other. See you next week. Bye. Deuces.
Bye.